Hey, true crime fanatics, this is Claire.
And I'm Andi.
You're tuned in to the Homicide Hobbies podcast, which is a podcast for people who love to hear about the horrendous crimes that people commit. Enjoy.
So today we're going to discuss the murder of 13-year-old Dylan Redwine. So trigger warnings. We do reference decapitation. There is obviously a murder of a minor. We're going to discuss a version of coprophilia.
There's different versions.
Well, there's like a sub version of it. But for those that have never heard of it before, coprophilia is when someone gets sexual pleasure from the excretion of human feces. But more specific for today's purposes, we'll be discussing coprophagia, which is the practice of eating your own or someone else's feces.
So pretty much just forewarning, this is not your podcast for lunchtime.
Correct. Don't be making brownies.
Save the Tootsie Rolls for later.
Gives a whole new meaning to the term sexual appetite.
You were one sick son of a bitch.
Coprophagia, by the way, is also a component of the wider term coprophilia, also known as scat play.
Not to me. Keep your scat playing to yourself.
We'll leave that to Mark Redwine.
Hey, I got a joke for you.
What?
Why did the toilet paper roll down the hill?
Why?
To get to the bottom. I won't tell any more poop jokes. They always stink.
It's going to be a shitty episode. Dylan Nicholas Redwine was born February 6, 1999. Dylan was the younger of two boys. He did have an older half-brother named Brandon. His older brother, Corey, is 7 years older than him. And Dylan was known to be a gifted athlete. He loved video games, and he was your early 2000s modern teen. I guess not really early. I guess 2010, 2012. So his half-brother Brandon's mother, Betsy, was married to Dylan and Corey's father, Mark Redwine, back in the
1800s. They're looking pretty good for their age then.
Back in the
30 in is like the fountain of youth.
Oh, a side note for our listeners. So Claire does such a fabulous job of her accents that from this case forward, any quotes from our criminals are going to come from Claire with whatever accent she feels, whatever one fits their personality. Something to look forward to. So Dylan and Corey's parents, so you've got Mark, who we just established was married to a woman named Betsy in the 80s. And
not the 1800s.
Correct. And then their mother was Elaine Hatfield, who later remarries and becomes Elaine Hall. Their family lived in Colorado. In 2001, Mark Redwine was charged with some sort of child abuse case. I don't know the details on it because it did involve a child, and most of that stuff is sealed because it's involving a child. I would assume it was on his older son, Brandon, possibly on Corey. After 17 years of marriage, Elaine and Mark decided to get divorced in 2007. Corey was around 15 and Dylan was 8. Elaine eventually remarries a man named Michael Hall and moves to Colorado Springs. Like with many divorces, the boys went with their mother, and they had limited visitations with Mark. Well, Mark varied between being a stay-at-home dad and an over-the-road truck driver. And for those that don't know, an over-the-road truck driver travels to different states and they can be gone for weeks at a time. So they obviously don't have constant visitation with their father. Mark's relationship deteriorated with Dylan and Corey. Some of the issues that were noted were that Mark was disgruntled about the whole divorce and his wife remarrying. or ex-wife remarrying, and he would run his mouth to his boys about their mother. And at some point, Dylan apparently witnessed Mark's violent temper, and it's assumed that that was why Dylan stopped respecting his father and like really didn't want to visit with him. So Dylan told his mother he no longer wanted visitations with Mark. It went back to court, obviously, and the courts demanded that Dylan had to spend Thanksgiving break at his father's house in November of 2012. There was nothing Elaine could do. She couldn't stop her son from doing this visitation because it's court ordered, and Elaine was told that she'd be held in contempt of court if she didn't put Dylan on a plane and send him to his father's house in Bayfield, Colorado. So, like, what is she supposed to do? She's not going to go to jail.
Yeah, it's a shitty situation to be in.
So, it's funny, since you know we're going to talk about some poo. The last time Elaine saw her son was when she watched him walk towards this plane on November 18th, 2012. Dylan was on his way to go spend Thanksgiving break with Mark. Elaine gave her son one last hug as he walked towards the plane, not realizing it was the last hug she would ever receive from her son. When Dylan's plane arrives, he texted a sad emoji to his mother, which, that sucks so bad. But Mark picked up Dylan from the airport, and now surveillance footage shows that he did in fact obviously pick him up, and then they went to a Walmart and then to a McDonald's. Dylan, not wanting to be at his dad's house, which, by the way, if you're already not wanting to be there and then you're forced to go and it went to court, like, dad knows that the kid doesn't want to be there. How awkward is that situation? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, anyway, so Dylan, not wanting to be at his dad's, texts his friend Ryan and asks, "Hey, can I spend the night?" Ryan's family was like, "Sure, that's fine." But Mark said no. So Ryan told Dylan, just come over really early the next morning, and they planned for like 6:30 early.
Well, I'm not surprised at that, because if he had to battle to get him there, it's not going to be no, you came here to visit me. You're not just going to get here and beat feet.
Yeah.
Which the forced family activities or forced things don't end up going well anyhow.
Yeah. I mean, what a tough spot to be in. Because, like, how do you know that it's not one side bad mouthing the other? Like, I don't understand what more could be done, because it's a tough spot for the courts, because from doing research, there are a lot of kids that don't want to go with the other parent, and then you end up with those kids being murdered by the parent they didn't want to be with, and the courts force the visitation. But then you have other parents that don't do anything wrong. They just want to spend time with their kids, but it's coming from the primary custodian talking smack and like persuading the child to not want to, like, to feel guilty. You know?
I feel like the turmoil that's brought up in divorces, that I think it's normal for kids to not want to go visit a certain parent. I'm not going to say all of them, but I feel like there are so many of them who would rather not, because it's just like, if the other parent is in that hostile bad mood still, a bitterness of being divorced. I think of Mrs. Doubtfire when they're eating and he's like, "You're my goddamn kids too." That like awkwardness of they might rather not want to visit next time because it was like, I don't want to keep doing this. But if you allow a child the option to not do that, they'll make a lifelong lasting decision that they might regret later. And how you can differentiate between legitimate, that kid does not need to be around that person, and then the ones of, you don't know what's good for you because you're just a teeny bopper right now. So
yeah, it's a tough spot.
Get through your hormonal rages and let's try to make you a sound adult, shall we? And by the way, here's a knife just in case.
If there's an uptick in teenagers stabbing their non-custodial parents, we know it came from you.
Well, thanks, Andrea.
I
Now
didn't
I'm an
say it.
accessory after the fact.
Actually, I think you put the idea in their head, so it's not really after. You're
Premeditating something?
yeah,
I
you're
am not.
premeditating.
I'm just meditating.
You're like those cult leaders that are like putting the idea in everybody else's head to go kill people.
No. No. I don't have a cult. We've got listeners.
I said you're like the cult leaders, where they don't technically do any murdering. They just send out other people to do it.
Fine, fine. So dial it back. So maybe not a knife, maybe some pepper spray, or you know what? No. That hand spray. Like the germicide, that to an eyeball. I feel like
Germex.
I don't know if that's a self-defense recommendation actually, because what if you miss? I feel like pepper spray you can do some distance, but you know what? In a pinch, I
I know
would
you said a spray.
definitely.
I know you said a spray, but I totally was picturing like the squirt bottle
Neosporin?
of people
No.
trying to fling like globs over. Oh gosh, kids.
Globs of what?
Germex. Like squirt it in
Oh.
your hand and fling it.
Hey, whatever gets the job done.
I don't feel like that would. That's like
You
a
don't
missed
know?
out. That's like a something about Mary just flinging.
Ew. I don't know what goes on in your household,
None of that.
but
This was all your idea.
yeah, there's no slinging anything, especially the something about Mary variety. Get nasty. Making a
Anyway,
mental note to wear shoes at your house. Squishiness. But anyway, I'm just
excuse me.
saying that
Excuse me. I made a mental note that next time we're down visiting you guys, I need to bring my own Neosporin and Band-Aids because your husband apparently hijacks it all.
what are the Band-Aids for?
For any boo-boos.
Oh. Yeah, but anyway, so we'll dial back again. So maybe fine, don't arm your children, but perhaps some self-defense classes. So they're little people. They need to know how to spot the danger and flee.
Which is really kind of sad if you're talking about visitation with another parent and needing self-defense classes.
Well,
I feel
having
like
been
self-defense is good either way, though.
well, I feel like it teaches some discipline too, that it's not like you're teaching somebody to whoop somebody else's ass and like become a bully, but I feel like there's some discipline that goes into that and helps curb the teeny bopper attitude filled they're not doing enough to exert some of that. Because again, I'm gonna say, I know I was one of those teens that it's amazing I was not smothered. So I know it, and it's not my prouder moment. So, but I'm just saying they can be difficult. Not saying smother your teens, not saying teens stab your non-custodial parent. Kind of got away from some things, but anywho, so I don't know how to get away from that of not making a child visit a parent. So I can understand where she's in the position she has to abide by what the court says, but the boy needs to have a better foundation for not wanting to see a parent than I don't want to.
Well, that's also what's kind of frustrating because we're going to get to it eventually as to why he doesn't want to visit the parent or Mark,
Yeah.
but I'm not going to give that tidbit away quite yet. So, after making plans to go visit with his friend Ryan the following morning at 6:30 in the morning, he was also texting his friend Amanda the same evening, and they were discussing a show they were watching. They were watching Adventure Time, for anybody that's curious.
I have no idea what that is.
I don't know. I think it's a cartoon. I think one of my kids watch. I think one of my older ones watch it. Anyway, Amanda said that Dylan just like disappeared, stopped texting. She figured maybe he went to bed, maybe his phone died, who knows. According to cell records, the last text that Dylan received was from his concerned mother asking, "How are you, son? Are you doing okay?" And that was around 10 p.m. Dylan never responded. In fact, no one heard from Dylan again. Mark claims that him and Dylan threw a Nerf football in the yard And then they watched a movie that they picked up at Walmart. And Mark claims that he went to bed at 9:30 p.m. and that Dylan was still up on the couch. So fast forward to the next morning, 6:45, Brian texts Dylan asking, you know, where are you? You're supposed to be here at 6:30. You're almost here. Obviously, no response. Mark claims that he got himself up at around 5:45 in the morning and got himself ready. And around 7 or 7:30, he went and tried to wake Dylan up, but he could not wake him up. Dylan was supposedly asleep on the couch, and Mark says that Dylan would not wake up and that he couldn't wake him up.
That doesn't make any sense.
What?
Like, there's been no amount of time that I've gone to wake Dave up, and it's been like, can't wake him up. Now, mind you, there's the times he's not ready to get up. That's a different thing. Or if like it's comatose, that's a problem.
Yeah, that would be a
Especially
massive
if they're
red
already
flag.
dead. There's a smell. He didn't just shit on the couch. He's dead.
So Mark says he had to go meet his attorney in town.
And we know why.
So
it wasn't his divorce attorney. It's so I did a thing. Could you tell me which direction I need to go with this?
So I don't think that was it, but
you don't know.
I said I don't know. Jeez.
His boy goes missing, and then it's just like he has a meeting with his attorney.
So I think it had more or less to do with the custody stuff, since they were in and out of court because of it.
Fine.
And now, for those that enjoy Claire's
accent, can't build it up like that. It puts under too much pressure.
Here we go. At 8:14 a.m., Mark texted Dylan.
Hey, bud, I'm out of the office. Call me.
1 minute later, another text from Mark to Dylan.
Call me, please.
At 11:23 a.m., another text.
Dill, I'm home. You're nowhere to be found. Come back. I can get you to Bayfield. At least call me, okay? Please, call me, okay?
At 2:33 p.m.,
Dylan, you need to call me. Where are you?
Good job, Claire. Cell records show Mark drove 30 minutes away to Durango during all of these texts and then back to his house. Mark also called Dylan's phone.
I have a question. During that driving, when did he start driving? Because when I'm home, you're nowhere to be found, call me back, that whole to get you to Bayfield. Was he just doing his errands and writing that shit because he already knew he wasn't home? So
that's the way I would take it.
Because I feel like it's just even at the 2:30 when he texts him, I need you to call me, where are you? If he's not home when he sends that text message, he doesn't know that he's not already home and just not getting his calls or text messages. And I also think it's weird if he's exclusively sending him text messages rather than trying to call.
So that's what I was just saying when you interrupted. It says that Mark also called Dylan's phone 7 times. The last time being at 9:23 p.m. and then again at 7:19 the following morning. So that would be, he arrived at his dad's on the 18th, went MIA the evening of the night of the 18th. Now we're on to the 19th. Okay. Where he's getting all these texts and supposed worry about where his kid is. And then now we're on to the 20th. At 7:19 a.m. the following morning, he called his son, but never again did he try to call or text Dylan. Dylan's dad then reaches out to Elaine, Dylan's mother, and asks if she'd heard from Dylan. Elaine receives a text message and it was a little after 4. So a little concerning. Elaine's over 7 hours away and hasn't had any form of communication with their son since the day before when he sent that sad face emoji. Mark tries to be slick with his whole, I went to town, yada, yada, yada bullshit. And Elaine is literally our proof that you always trust your gut, people. Always, always trust your gut. Because she texted Mark back. And I quote, he wouldn't just leave. He would have called me. I'm so suspect of you right now. How could he just disappear? So she was pretty spot on that, like,
Yeah, he's full of shit.
yeah, yes. Mark claimed that he just left the marshal's office where he supposedly reported Dylan missing at 4:30 p.m. on the 20th. Elaine, again, trusting her gut, gets on the phone, calls the marshal's office, and they didn't know anything about Dylan being missing. They had no missing persons report filed. So, again, Mark's lying, unless you want to give Mark the benefit of the doubt and say that he did file the missing persons report and she called too quickly and it hadn't been entered into the system yet. I don't know how all of that works. I don't know if they write it down and then input the information into the system or if it's like a right away kind of thing. But perhaps there's a chance that he did and she just called too quickly. I don't know. I'm going to go with the side of he's full of it. He's a shit. But we'll get back to that. Elaine calls Corey, Dylan's older brother, which, by the way, Corey at this point is 18 or 19, so he doesn't have to do these visitations. Otherwise, he would have been forced to be there also. But Elaine calls Corey and tells him that Dylan's missing. And Corey, Elaine, and Elaine's husband, Mike, all pack their bags and immediately leave and head to Bayfield. So this was at 5:30, the same day that they found out Dylan was missing. Like, they didn't wait to see if he would reappear. They packed their shit. They knew something was wrong, and they headed the 7 hours to get to where Dylan was supposed to be. They arrived in Bayfield around 2:30 in the morning and went straight to the marshal's office. At that point, Elaine finds out that Mark had in fact reported Dylan missing. Mark took more than 6 hours before he reported his son missing. Now that Dylan's officially been reported as a missing person, people start putting together search parties because Mark lives in a very heavily wooded area and that there's, like, I guess a park or whatever nearby, like a heavily wooded.
Yeah, an area he could be.
Yeah. But Elaine, by the way, was just like, hey, that's not a thing. He likes his inside. He likes his devices. He likes electricity. He's not a camper.
Yeah. Boy Scouts he opted out of.
Correct. So Deputy Fire Chief Roy Reland receives an alert about the missing minor, and Roy immediately drops everything and heads over to Mark's house, where he notes there is many, many bottles of liquor in and around Mark's house. And
those are his burglar alarms.
Right? Deputy Fire Chief Roy Reland noted that Mark also seemed concerned, but not frantic. He didn't seem like your average, my kid's missing parent. Yes. So local police attempted to use canines to help find Dylan's trail or his scent. And they asked Mark, hey, can you provide us with anything with Dylan's scent on it? And Mark said, there's nothing in this house with Dylan's scent.
I already burned it. I mean,
right? Like, how, like, did the kid not pack a bag? Can't you just open his bag? It's going to have stuff that he's touched. But Mark was adamant that there was nothing in the house with his scent on it. They were like, are you sure? We could take anything, a toothbrush, a hairbrush, a pillow that he slept on, any article of clothing, literally anything this boy has touched. And Mark insisted, there's nothing in this house like that.
like toothbrushes.
So, right? Like, where did all his stuff go? But anyway.
Did they ever find his stuff?
It doesn't say whether or not they found his bag. So to this day, his devices have never been found. But eventually Mark forks over a pillow that he claimed Dylan, because you know his whole story that he tried to wake Dylan. So they were like, well, what about the pillow that you said he was sleeping on? So Mark hands that over. The dogs give it a whiff, but are utterly confused because it doesn't smell like anybody's scent. Whether it was freshly washed or a different pillow, I don't know.
I just pictured a German Shepherd going, oh, I don't smell anything.
Right?
I got COVID.
So eventually Dylan's mother provides police with his hat and the
They
dogs,
had the sense to travel with some shit. Although, how sad of a state of mind do you have to be to think of that?
right? That's
Either
horrible.
that or maybe
That's a
she brought
horrible thought.
something to have of him,
Or maybe she
as she
packed him a
goes.
bag in case he
Yeah,
did get lost in the woods or something and would need a change of anything. And she knows her ex-husband's a dipshit and probably doesn't have
a
stuff
wash
that this
machine.
kid needs. Stuff that the kid needs.
Oh,
Like at
yeah.
this point, I can honestly say if I had a child go missing and my idiot ex was responsible for the child during that time, I would not be dependent upon them or reliant upon the fact that they have anything necessary that our child would need if they were found.
You'd bring the
So
Band-Aids.
I would bring the band-aids. I'd ask Dave if we could borrow some Neosporin. You know what? Stop. We would just go buy more. Anyway, poor Dave.
Mm-hmm.
Love you, Dave. Anyway, so Elaine ends up telling ABC Radio that she was worried that Mark had done something resulting in the disappearance of Dylan. Again, this woman is spot on. Like, and at this point, by the way, Dylan had been missing for 7 days. On November 26, 2012, the FBI joins the search for the missing teen. By the way, while people were out searching for Dylan, it's noted that Mark would stand outside on his porch with a hot cup of coffee, watching all of these people who gathered together to find Dylan, and he would
That's
just be standing on the
because,
porch.
yeah, scratching his beer belly, picking his teeth, burping into the wind, just like he's not over there. I know because I put him on the other side of that ridge. And he was just on the porch protecting his bottle collection that he's got outside. He saw somebody eyeballing him. That was a special bottle of vodka for him.
So I totally picture him in like a dirty, filthy bathrobe with like one of those white
It's
stained
funny.
wife beaters with holes and some tidy whities that are filthy, just scratching his gut.
So I totally didn't picture the bathrobe, but I did picture the dirty wife beater with like little holes in it tucked into his tidy whities. That, by the way, neither are white, but just
And then
like his hair's all messed up because heaven forbid you go out on your front porch and run a brush through your hair. But it's like a comb over that I don't know if he's bald or not, but I'm just saying like a comb over that's flopped the other direction because he didn't bother to comb it over. That's what I'm picturing.
me too. It's pretty funny. I'll send you some pictures of him here in a minute. You'll love him. The next day, so November 27th, family and friends hold a vigil for Dylan. Mark tells the local papers he does not believe his son ran away because he had nothing to run away from. 2 days later, La Plata Sheriff's Office issue a search warrant for Mark's property. The exact details of the night of Dylan's disappearance are unknown, and we'll probably never fully know what happened. But the search warrant showed Dylan's blood was in the living room everywhere. And when I say everywhere, I mean everywhere. Not a little
Are
bit
we
of blood,
talking pools or splatters?
both.
Poor
So
baby.
it's on the couch, it's on the coffee table, it's on the love seat, it's all over the wood floor, it's even under the area rug, but there was no blood on the rug, meaning the rug had to have been rolled up and put back.
That's weird.
It is. Once police see the amount of blood that came from this child, they were like, nothing good happened here. So, for those that have been living under a rock, cadaver dogs indicate human remains. They indicated they found the scent of human remains near Mark's truck bed and the clothes that he was wearing the night that Dylan disappeared. We know what clothes he was wearing because of the footage from when he picked him up at the airport, went to Walmart, and went to McDonald's. So obviously, your whole doesn't have a washing machine theory might be spot on. It's not, but just saying.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Hang on, now I'm confused.
I would totally go wash my clothes if I killed somebody or get rid
Dude,
of them,
the
burn them.
amount of the amount of times people don't think of washing their stuff makes me curious. Like, after I mow the lawn, that's the next thing I do. I come in, I strip down, and that gets started. You know why? Because I don't want to smell that 3 days later. The bottom of a
Ugh.
hamper. Just grow it. I'd probably grow a lawn on that.
So,
By the way, that's because it's humid as heck out there. So it's just like, I don't care anybody said, there's no way you can mow the lawn without sweating. So just saying, 5 hours later, that stuff could be wrung out. So it's going in the wash. And I'm just saying, that's what I would do. And it's not coated in blood from murdering someone. So I don't get, the boy's been missing 7+ days and he didn't wash anything.
correct.
And
So
it's Colorado, so he doesn't have a fireplace or anything. He would, like, I don't.
Right. So an agent says that he asked Mark if maybe, because like at this point they know that Mark knows more than he's letting on. The amount of blood that was cleaned up in this man's house doesn't
they're looking
happen.
at him as being pretty good for it, is what's happening here.
Yeah, but they have no proof, so they're just trying to get to the bottom of it. So a very clever agent was like, "Hey, Mark, do you think it's possible that maybe Dylan went for a walk and like maybe a bear got him?" And the agent,
or a Colorado coyote.
And Mark got excited at the idea of a bear attacking his son. So excited that this agent made a note of like, that's like
weird,
not a typical behavior that you would expect. If somebody was like, "Hey, your son is missing. Do you think a bear got him?" I'd be like, "Oh God, I hope not. I hope he's just like, lost in the woods somewhere." But a bear? No, that didn't cross my mind. What the heck?
I feel like I'd be like, what kind of a sick fucking question is that to ask me? No, I would that, and even if it did cross my mind, did you forget you were talking to one of his parents, asshole? Go talk to a police officer about that. Don't tell me all the sordid ways that he could have died. Thanks. Now I'm gonna go to sleep thinking of that, asshole, and walk off.
Right. So I guess the agent was just kind of trying to feel out how
he was expecting to get that kind of reaction, and he didn't.
Anything, but instead he got like, yeah.
Oh yeah, he did. He
that's
did.
probably what.
And you know what? I bet he took his head.
So
I was doing my best impression of the dad then, not like you got weirdly quiet. So thanks.
Well, I mean, I know I threw out decapitation as a trigger warning for you to put 2 and 2 together, but does turn out that his head was removed, hence the rolled up rug, blood on the coffee table. Anyway, well, way to ruin the story, Claire.
I'm just going to throw it out there. You also mentioned scat play earlier, and I've only ever heard of scat as being reference of bear shit. So the fact that you brought up a bear, that's where I wasn't sure if that was going either. Is Colorado full of bear turd eating? I don't know how you'd say it, but that's because I don't do it either. So that's where when you said scat eating or scat play or whatever fucked up shit that you were Googling was, that's what I was a little concerned when you said a bear. That's where my head went, at least.
So there were no bears involved in the story other than the agent interjecting his theories to just gauge Mark's behavior.
There. And he got weirdly excited, the sixth bitch.
Correct. So the report suggested that the blood in the house was fairly fresh, like within a year, and also it didn't take a rocket scientist to figure it out, but the house had previously somehow caught on fire and had undergone major reconstruction due to said fire, and Dylan had only been in the house less than a handful of times. So there's literally no way that he could have bled and left DNA like that. You know what I mean? So
that fire, by the way, was Frito pie making.
There's so many ADD moments in this
I know. Podcast. You're going to have to write down that time because I think we're going to lose some people. It's my fault.
Frito pie is Claire's husband's way of cooking. It's Fritos and basically canned chili with some cheese, jalapenos, and
I'm just saying the guy probably didn't cook so well, so he set the kitchen on fire. That's why half the house was on fire. That was, he
Perhaps.
turned the wrong burner on and walked away.
Perhaps.
Set fire to those hot dog buns.
So Mark
Who?
had an ex-girlfriend named Karen Alexander, which I'm going to say she's the first Karen. I know she's not, but we're going to say she is because she's a liar, liar, pants on fire. She claims that when Mark and her were still together, that there was a time around Labor Day where Dylan had cut his finger and bled all over the living room.
So which finger did he lose?
More like which hand?
Because I feel like if there's enough to leave a pool of blood, wouldn't you have like an ER trip to back up that injury?
Not only that, but to leave pools of blood in many, many spots along with some blood splatter. Like, no.
And why didn't he clean that? Which, by the way, I assume all this blood splatter was tested and confirmed to be Dylan's?
Yes,
Or
it was confirmed to be Dylan's, and he cleaned it up. So they went in and
luminol the place?
yeah, and that's how they found all of this blood. They tested all these spots and it came back that it was 100% Dylan's DNA.
You know what? Might I say I find the living room a very peculiar place to I keep wanting to say deconstruct, but that's not the correct word there. Give me the word, Andrew. Yep, to dismember a body. Like,
yeah,
you don't got a catch basin in there.
I don't want to give too much away, but spoiler alert, Mark obviously did kill his son, and then I feel like he dismembered or decapitated him and decided to keep it all in the room where the incident started, kind of deal, versus DNA getting spread everywhere, control the mess.
Yeah, but the amount of blood that somebody loses is a whole lot, and when you start cutting in more, not that I chop up bodies, I'm just saying the amount of blood a person has in their body does not seem like a good idea to add more just because that's where you started. Was he decapitated or dismembered?
So he was just decapitated. But we'll get back to that. You're interrupting the story.
That's just really weird. Like just his head? You'd think. I always
if you think that's weird, wait till you find out what else this man does.
Well, I thought the whole reason to take somebody's head and like their hands and everything was to avoid identification. But if you just take their head, I don't know.
We'll get back to that.
Ew, does he keep his head?
No. So they have all this blood evidence, no body though, no proof of a crime. And you know how like we've done lots of research. They didn't find blood specifically, but they found Dylan's DNA. And at that point, they couldn't distinguish between was it blood or was it just his bodily fluid?
Ew.
Which I feel like.
Ew. Ew, 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 ew. They didn't luminol the shower floor, did they? Powell sheets.
So
disgusting.
But
thanks for that.
But it's it still goes along with the whole no body, no technical blood. So they can't prove that a crime actually occurred, right?
It's just leading them down, kind of like a lie detector test, I would imagine, that it's just leading them the right direction, but nothing to really arrest the 6 on bleach.
Correct. So due to pressure from Mark's family, Mark's brother David and his other kids, Corey, Dylan's older brother, and then Mark and Brandon, Dylan's half-brother, Mark's other son, decide in December of 2012 that they would go search for Dylan up on Middle Mountain Road, which is where Dylan's remains would later be found. They went up there with Mark, and Mark looked around and said, Dylan's not here, and turned around and left. And I guess the way that he acted was super suspicious because at that point, Dylan's half-brother, Brandon, claimed he knew that Mark knew more than he was letting on. Like, he got squirrely on that road for whatever reason. And the thing is they had been told by the authorities that when the snow died down, when it was all melted and the ground was more easily
Seen.
searched, that they would start the search up for Dylan again. Because at this
Yeah.
point, it's a recovery of his body, because there's no way an unprepared
Yeah.
13-year-old kid is going to be able to survive a Colorado winter without any type of supplies.
No.
So,
Well, and like, and just the time of year, I would assume, since they said when the snow goes away, that there's obviously snow, but they can get 10 inches of snow in a day. So the fact that even after a week before they started doing like the search and rescue kind of thing, he could have been very much buried under several feet.
correct. So, Michael Hall, Dylan's stepfather, they were still out searching, even though the search crews officially had, on the official level, had stopped
Yeah.
looking.
I
The
can
family,
understand that, because how do you just stop looking and wait for spring?
yeah. So the family continued to search, and so did friends, and so did other locals. But Michael Hall said he spotted Mark flying down Middle Mountain Road one morning in April of 2013, a few days before before they were told by search crews that they were going to go search for the first time in that area. So Michael Hall, being suspicious, decided, this motherfucker just spotted me and took off. And why is he over here? What is he doing? Mark hadn't made any effort to help search when the weather was good. Why is he over here? So
Yeah.
Michael Hall puts up some game cameras to try to see if he could catch Mark doing anything, which I guess he does. I did do some research, and he does turn the tapes over to authorities, which does in fact put Mark in that area right before the search crews go to look for him.
They caught him doing stuff, or
So I don't know what was actually on the tapes other than Mark in the vicinity of where they later find Dylan's body.
at least they know from his behavior they're getting close.
Yeah. So Dylan remains a missing person until June 27th, 2013, when searchers found parts of Dylan's remains 8 to 10 miles from Mark's house on Middle Mountain Road, where Michael Hall had put those game cameras to try to keep tabs on his ass.
Another one of
So,
those It's another one of those times of trust your gut, of you can't say exactly what made you suspicious, but you know some shit was suspicious, and that guy was spot on too.
exactly. So, after they find Dylan's remains, but his head was missing, Brandon apparently was like confronting Mark and asking him, like, hey, where do you think the rest of Dylan could be? What do you think happened to him? Like, what are your thoughts there, Paul? And Mark continuously kept using terminology that is out of his vocabulary, like blunt force trauma, which raised a red flag for Brandon because, again, his skull is missing. Dylan's skull's missing. So why would he even say blunt force trauma? And if you're going with the whole a bear got him,
Bears don't wield thumping tools.
exactly. So 8 miles, by the way, is not far from his house, because I freaking run that on a daily basis, if not more.
You're a freak of
That's,
nature, though, so
but still, it's on an ATV trail. 8 miles is not far. And by the way, Mark owned an ATV and was very familiar with the area. So, and he was over there. Like, if you're not going to look for your kid with anybody else or at any other time, but you're told, hey, we're going to go search this area, and that's where you go to, not once, but twice.
did
Because
they
remember,
check his ATV for evidence?
you know what? I'm not sure.
You said the bed of his truck, right?
Yeah.
That had human remains.
Yeah. Mark claims to have been blindsided to hear that Dylan was, in fact, dead. And since all of Dylan's remains were not found, they could not determine a cause of death. a couple months later, on August 5th, 2013, a cadaver dog went through Mark's house again. They indicated the remains scent or there was something suspicious over inside the home, including the living room and the washing machine. I know this seems like super weird, right? This whole case so far. Like, why would
Especially considering you started it talking about poop.
So, exactly, but why would a father that he claims he loves more than life itself want his son dead? Makes no sense. Well, it turns out that the falling out that Dylan and Corey both had with their father was due to a previous visit in 2011. Now, mind you, Corey went missing in November, on November 18th, 2012. So during one of the visits in 2011, Mark had been gone for a while, and he called up his boys and was like, hey, let's go on a trip, pack your bags. And Elaine, I give her massive props because when I couldn't imagine having a visitation schedule where he pops in and he's like, oh, I'm back in the area. Tell the boys I'm taking them with me. Like, if she had any plans or whatever, she put that aside so that her boys would at least have some type of relationship with their dad. So mad ass respect to her. And this, by the way, was when the boys still had a good relationship with their father. Picks up the boys. They're on one of their visits. Mark decides to go take a nap. They're in a hotel room. Dylan decides to hop on his dad's laptop. So I don't know what he was doing on the laptop, but apparently somehow he found a file.
Uh-oh.
Guys, don't open the files. Pandora's box.
No. Let's say if there's some weird shit or things you don't want other people to see, password protected.
Correct. But if it's not password protected, it seems suspicious, it's not your computer, don't look at it. You don't know what your eyeballs are about to lay eyes on, and you can't unsee some shit.
Pandora's box will forever be open.
Yes, which, by the way, we're going to post the pictures I'm about to talk about, and it's your own Pandora's box. Once you see it, you won't be able to unsee it. So peek it with caution. To Dylan's shock and horror, he found some, obviously, if you haven't picked up on it, disturbing photos of his father. And again, we will post these pictures on our Facebook page, Homicide Hobbies on Facebook. For those that aren't following us, give us a check out. There's several pictures of Mark. He was taking selfies. And granted, my kids would probably cringe if they saw me taking selfies, but that shouldn't be embarrassing. These selfies, however, were not your average duck face. I'm going to go ahead and send you these pictures, Claire, if you want to open them up and take a gander.
Okay, so
Hang
picture one.
No. So it's Exhibit 17. So we'll go with that one.
Yeah, so Mark
he's wearing a woman's bra.
Yeah.
He's got
I don't know if that's a sock or something around his neck, but it looks like
it's around his head.
I don't know what's on him, but he's doing what I can only say is like if the Easter Bunny was drunk and covered in turds, making his best Bucky Tooth come hither face.
Oh my God.
Is my best description of this.
He's got like longish hair and it looks like it's pinned back on the one side.
Look.
Man or woman.
The motivation of this picture was to be some level of erotic. It is not.
So let's go to Exhibit 18.
So we got some clear granny panties that are...
So it's women's underwear.
They look like they were used to create like a turd level tea bag of just the amount of shit that is on, like, we're going to say it's pudding because I just can't. But they are also crammed in this man's face where he's still wearing the bra he was in the previous picture, but paired that with, I guess it was too much cleavage for him, pair that with a lacy camisole thing. Hey, you know what? I recognize these panties. These were what was in picture number 1, like flung over his shoulder.
No, because look at
Look at the
his head.
pattern. Yeah, he's got a
No.
headband. Maybe he's wearing the other set as to hold his hair back. Because heaven
Uh-uh.
forbid he get hair or turds in those beautiful locks.
So if you look at picture 17, exhibit 17, he's got like that headband, and that's what's draped over his shoulder. Go back.
I'm not.
It's because it's
Once
white
is
and it's got like some
plenty.
type of blue pattern and blue around the edge.
Well,
Those
anywho, he's
those
got
panties don't have that.
turd drenched panties wedged in his mouth.
Okay.
And
And
spilled poo on his cheeks from picture number 1.
all right, now move on to exhibit 19.
Now, this we can't confirm that that's who this is. I would just assume from the previous pictures this is Mark, because you can only see from his booger nose down to his chin.
Those aren't boogers. That's shit on his nose.
Can you have dingleberries in your nose? I thought it was exclusively a butt thing, but I also didn't think there'd be turds on somebody's face either. But, so you just see from the nose down and his tongue's out where he's like, you can anticipate he's going to lick said poopy panties.
And he's got feces in his beard, on his cheeks, on his nose.
Pudding, Andrea. It's pudding.
It's not pudding. He confirmed that it was fecal matter, okay?
I'm saying we're going to use it as a code word of pudding. It's pudding. Can't look at these.
All right, go to the last picture.
Exhibit 20 is a zoomed in picture of him wearing some Depends, and they are clearly filled. Filled to the point of explosive diaper. Like, yes, it looks like he filled those panty Depend things and then bounced up and down until it squirted out of both sides and then rubbed it around. That is exhibit 20.
Could you imagine being 12 or 13 and finding photos of your father like that?
But see, that's where I feel like I don't even know if that's grounds to not visit your father again. Because even if they told the court, it'd be like, right, but he's doing it to himself. And if he wants to eat shit, it's whatever he wants to do on his own time. And you were nosing around on his computer. So even if he would have been forthcoming with that information, it would just be like a, what kind of reaction rather than a, yeah, you don't have to visit him. That is weird. And to all the poo eaters out there, just because we don't understand it, you do you. K-cup.
No.
I don't need to see the pictures, but now it questions anytime I tell somebody their breath smells like shit. Not that I tell people that, but like if I'm thinking it and I'm like, whew. Now it's like, what'd you eat for lunch? Doesn't smell like onions.
Okay, but that wasn't my point. I'm just saying, could you imagine being 12 years old and finding pictures of dad wearing women's underwear? You forgot about the fact that he was wearing makeup. I realized it was covered up by the poo, but he was also wearing makeup.
I feel like it's weird that you look that close.
Anywho, I was reading the report of Corey testifying about the photos.
Did you also know those were camellias on the pattern of the undies? Like, no, don't look that close. Why were you looking that close?
Is that what was on the underwear?
No, that's my point.
Anyway, according to older brother Corey, Dylan found these pictures, was shocked, and immediately went and got Corey and was like, hey, you need to see what I just found on Dad's computer.
Look at what Dad's doing.
The boys took the computer and went into the bathroom at the hotel, and Dylan showed the photos to Corey. Corey whips out his cell phone and takes pictures of the pictures on the father's computer screen. So now they have record of said photos.
Which is actually what I think the exhibits are.
They are. You can see that there are pictures of the pictures.
A picture of a picture rather than...
Well, you can see it's a picture of a computer screen because if you look at the photos again, they've got all the icons from the computer.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. I think that's the exhibit of from when they took the pictures, which is interesting because I wonder if he like just disposed of this whole computer.
or if it was an exhibit because, like you said, it doesn't matter what the
Yeah,
father's doing on his own time. This is just proof that this is
they
what ended up
saw it.
leading to the confrontation between father
Yeah.
and sons.
Yeah. Turned into a
Neither
shit
one of
show.
neither one of the boys confronted their father about the
Wait.
photos.
Ugh. They didn't? They just
They
didn't say
did not.
anything to anybody?
They didn't. They lost all respect for him, didn't want to visit with him anymore, but they just kept their mouths shut. They're just like, nah.
Well,
Could you
I don't
imagine
know
giving
what
dad
kind
a
of
hug and a kiss goodbye? I know you don't kiss him on the mouth, but
you
I
do.
wouldn't want him to kiss me on the cheek. What?
You made it sound like you do. Like, Andrea.
No. You generally don't kiss your parents on the mouth, but if like I give my kids a kiss on the cheek, or like when I'm tucking Carson in at night, I kiss his forehead. If I saw somebody that's about to kiss my face, previously having smears of poo everywhere, I'd be like, "Ooh." The boys didn't tell anybody about the photos. They did not, including their mother. They never mentioned it to their mom.
Well, they were trying to block it out. They didn't know the whole Pandora's box thing. They
And I
thought they
also,
could just imagine it away.
well, I also feel like that to a certain extent, the tension between the mother and the father was already kind of high, seeing as how they're divorced. She's remarried and they're still going back and forth in court.
Yeah.
So maybe by not
Well,
making
I
shit worse.
good one. I like how you put it in there subtly and not squealed it into the mic.
On June 29th, 2015. Okay, so remember, he went missing November 18th, 2012.
Uh-huh.
And now we're to 2015. Elaine Hall files a wrongful death lawsuit against Mark Redwine because, you know,
It
he
happened
was
on his
responsible
watch.
for, yeah, but it was dismissed due to the statute of limitations. On August 19th, 2015, Mark Redwine is officially named a person of interest in Dylan's death by the La Plata County Sheriff's Department.
I feel like that could have been named when they found the blood in his, or the fluid all over his house.
Correct. Dylan's cause of death was also changed from undetermined to a homicide, which I don't understand why it was determined as undetermined. They still don't know how he died, so how can you switch it over to a homicide?
I don't know how it wasn't suspicious anyway. How many bodies do they find in the spring that their heads are just wandered off? Because I would expect that if a creature is going to nibble at something, that it'll drag an arm or a leg or something really meaty.
Yeah, not a
Not
skull, something hard
not
to grasp.
cleanly decapitate a skull and try to play soccer with it to get it back to wherever to gnaw on it. And even then, it's not meaty.
Yeah. So on November 1st, 2015, so almost a full 3 years since he's been missing, Dylan's skull was found. It was found by hikers about a mile and a half from where Dylan's other remains were found. The autopsy report showed his cause of death was due to blunt force trauma to the head. So to bring back around to like what you mentioned before, I think he clobbered Dylan in the head, killed him, and then was like, oh shit, they're going to know that I smashed his head in. And he decapitated him and then tried to hide the head elsewhere so that they couldn't, because he knew if they couldn't determine a cause of death, that he wasn't going to be able to be proven that he had done anything wrong. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Hence the rolled up carpet, chop off his head, as gross as that sounds, and then dispose of the remains. Nearly 2 years later, after his skull was found, on July 22nd, 2017, Mark Redwine was arrested in Washington State for second-degree murder and child abuse resulting in a child's death. Mark's trial began on June 14th, 2021. So he sat in jail 3 years almost before his trial actually, or 4 years before his trial actually started.
That's
During
because
the
of
trial,
how long it took his attorney to recover from seeing those pictures.
also COVID, because you know how it shut down like the court system there for a while.
Maybe. Wait, you said 2015.
I said 2020. No, I said June 14th, 2021. Didn't I?
Maybe.
During the trial, a Colorado Parks and Wildlife officer stated in the indictment, he believes it's highly unlikely that an animal dragged Dylan's body to the previous recovery site and the skull to where it was eventually discovered. So they don't think that an animal popped the skull off and dragged him a mile and a half apart. Forensic anthropologists determined that Dylan's skull had injuries consistent with blunt force trauma, including 2 small markings consistent with tool marks from a knife. This discovery reminded investigators of a conversation with Brandon, Dylan's half-brother, about Mark more than 2 years earlier, where Brandon told investigators that Mark had mentioned several times that he believed that Dylan will have died from blunt force trauma, and how investigators would have to find the rest of Dylan's body, including the skull, before they could determine that was in fact his cause of death. And also during the trial, Mark's ex-wife, his first ex-wife, Betsy, she was married to Mark for 6 years in the 80s, not the 1800s.
Thanks for clearing that up.
No problem. She's the mother of Brandon. Betsy said Mark told her that if he ever had to get rid of a body, he would leave it up in the mountains. And during their divorce proceedings, Mark repeatedly violated the custody agreement and told Betsy that he would, quote, kill the kids before he ever let her have them. Which, by the way, right before the visitation with Dylan, Elaine had received full custody of Dylan. So on July 16th, just over a month after his case started, our shit eater was found guilty on all charges. Mark Redwine's sentencing hearing on October 8th, the judge read a statement from Mark that said he was innocent of all charges and that it was a miscarriage of justice and it was a fake conviction, a sham of a trial, blah, 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 blah. Mark claims he was going to exercise his right to an appeal because the jury was biased and that there was no evidence that any crime was committed and that he too lost a child that he, quote, loved more than life itself.
Sure he did.
That was what Mark had to say. But Judge Jeffrey Wilson said there was an overwhelming amount of evidence against Mark. He also said, quote, after all of this time and listening to what was heard in this courtroom, you still take absolutely no responsibility for what you did to Dylan. I have trouble remembering a convicted criminal defendant that has shown such an utter lack of remorse for his criminal behavior.
I agree.
Judge Jeffrey Wilson continued, as a father, it is your obligation to protect your son and keep him from harm. Instead, you inflicted enough injury on him to kill him in your living room. And after the passion of whatever caused you to act the way you did, once that subsided, you didn't think twice about Dylan. You thought only about yourself. You sanitized the crime scene, you hid Dylan's body, and you went so far as to remove the boy's head from the rest of his body. I really like that judge.
Yeah.
Mark was sentenced to 48 years in prison for the murder of his son, and hopefully he gets as much shit to eat as he would like.
Ew.
I feel like the jail can save budget on his meals.
Andrea.
Blair.
That was disgusting.
No, the photos are disgusting. I'm just simply pointing out his meal plan. That's all I got.
Thanks for that.
No problem. Sitting here closing these pictures out on my computer before I walk out of the room that I'm currently in because I do not want my children to see those.
So you can get out of your closet?
In the laundry room. Thank you. Hiding.
Thank you for listening to Homicide Hobbies. I'm Claire.
I'm Andi.
Follow us each week to get your fix of the atrocities that occur in true crime. And don't forget to tell people about us and rate us if you like us. But don't rate us if you didn't. Just change the channel.